So I have been using the Aiyima A80 for several weeks now. Previous to that, I had the Topping MX3S for a while, and that was a very good amp, but I just wanted a bit more power and a bit more dynamic range, especially with my new speakers. So I am using the Triangle Comete 40th anniversary, and these use the magnesium dome horn-loaded tweeters. Now these tweeters, combined with this revised internal structure that they've got, the stereo imaging, the soundstage is quite incredible. And for that, I wanted an amp that allowed me to swap out some components inside, namely the OpAmps, to get that exact flavor of sound that I like. It comes with the Texas Instruments NE5532P by default. Now these are good OpAmps. They're not extraordinary, but they are good. They're a safe OpAmp to use, so they'll cater to most listening preferences. The bass isn't too low, the treble isn't too high. It's just nice and neutral. The OPA828, which I then upgraded to, I didn't like. I found the soundstage to be a bit more narrow. The stereo imaging wasn't as immersive, and the high-end peaks, they were too bright, and some female vocals in some music sounded too sibilant, which is not what I'm used to, and that was with the tone controls, the bass and treble set to 0. And nothing I did with the tone controls sort of mitigated that. So I removed the 828 and installed the OPA627. Now these were a next step up compared to the stock, so much better than the 828. Now I had actual soundstage, and the stereo imaging was a bit more immersive than the stock ones. The bass was also a little lower. The high-end detail, it pulled out the vocals and string instruments especially. You could hear the wind blowing through trumpets and saxophones especially as well, and the strumming of guitar strings. So yeah, on these types of speakers, a very good op-amp to use, and inexpensive at around about £11 for the pair as well. So I'm just going to pull out those op-amps just to show you what the size difference is compared to the stock. So on the left we have the NE5532P. So that is just an IC op-amp, and you do need to bend the legs slightly to get into the dip 8 socket on the A80. And on the right we have the OPA627. So again, there's 2 of these each. This is currently sat on the riser at the moment, so ignore the height, but it's the width. And there's dual, so on the underside do have another one as well, so you do need to use them in dual configuration when purchasing. But yeah, £11 each for the pair, sorry, and the 828s are the same size as well. Whereas the Sparkos, I'll put some B-roll around about here somewhere in the video. The Sparkos are considerably bigger than these. There's just about enough clearance for them to be installed. Immediate things I do like about it: the volume dial, or the controller, is very nice, so you can probably hear, very notchy, and the dial itself, the knob, it weighs 25 grams, so it's quite a bit of weight to it, and it feels nice, just single finger. It does come with a remote, but I actually prefer using the dial, and quick adjustments are just a quick press away, double press to go back. You also probably saw there when I turned the dial that the signal path went on. 5 minutes of inactivity of no signal from whatever source you're using, it will go into a sleep mode, and the display goes into a low brightness mode as well. So unless you have the display set to auto, so now it's in the off mode for auto, when I press something, it will come back to life. But one issue I found there is with the display set to anything other than the maximum. So you've got 3 modes: low, medium, high, and then auto, which is sleep mode for the display, and it comes back to life when you press something. So when the display is on anything but the max, you might be able to hear it in the video. Yeah, so when the display went off, the whining noise, like a whining noise that plays at any brightness value that is not max or off. So you hear that whining noise just for a moment until it goes back to sleep again. But if I put it on low mode, I mean, I don't know if it's going to come out on the video, but I can hear it. Although my hearing's quite sensitive to that kind of thing anyway. So So I'll put it back on max just because it's bothering my ears. And no matter where I stand in the room, I can hear that tone, so, or that whine. So it's like a coil whine or a capacitor whine or something like that. So that's a little annoying, but again, I just leave it on max brightness all the time anyway, or I just put it on auto and that's fine. But yeah, the display goes to sleep after 5 minutes of no signal, and it comes back to life within, it's like not even a second, maybe half a second, as soon as the signal is detected or you begin playback again. So I am using USB to my PC, and unlike on the topping, there is no playback controls on the remote, so you can't control Spotify or Netflix or whatever you're doing on the PC with media playback on via the remote control, which you can when connected by USB on the topping, the MX3S, which is what I had before. So it's just worth keeping that in mind, but it's not a huge issue because keyboards these days have media controls anyway. The remote has the same menu options as well. So you've got your options for the input, you've got various inputs to play with, RCA, TRS, coaxial, TRS is balanced input, optical, USB, and Bluetooth. And it is Bluetooth 5.1 with aptX HD support. Then you've got your tone controls. Now I have dialed in some treble and bass just because that's my own preference and I'm still testing things out, but this seems very good. There's no harshness or sibilance, or having a bass that high does not create muddy bass either, especially on these speakers. Next up we have the light. So this is the backlight control, so that's, you don't need to deal with that. And finally we have our style. So you've got 3 VU meters. If I just put that down a bit and show you what they're all like. So this is a single VU meter. Then we have a dual VU meter for left and right channels. And then we have a graphic EQ. And this works quite well. So I'll just play an online tone generator that I found, and you can see the sweep. (13 kilohertz) down to 58 hertz. These speakers don't need a powerful amp to drive them. They just need good quality sound. And I found around about here, I don't know what percentage figure or dB figure that is on that dial there, because you don't get an actual numerical figure, you just get this dial, which is slightly annoying, but hey ho. Around about here is loud enough, things like, and the VU meter is displaying the volume level of the dial, not the input signal. So the input signal could be playing something and the dial wouldn't, the meters wouldn't move until the volume is increased a bit. So the louder the volume, the higher the peaks will be on the meter. So again, that might be an annoyance for some. I don't mind too much. I just like it visually because it looks cool. There was one issue I had yesterday where all of the sound coming out of the speakers were all muffled. It's like garbled compression or something like that. And the only way to fix it was to pull the power cord and plug it back in. There's no button on the back or switch to just power it off and on. You have to pull out the cable or turn off on the main switch on the plugs and then back on. Initially I thought maybe the amp had died or my op amps had died, but nope, power cycling it seemed to fix it. So might be a firmware glitch, might just be a random occurrence. I'll have to keep an eye on it. It's only happened once so far, so that has been the only bug I've noticed. Low volume, there's no issues with no volume at all. It's obviously a controller knobs digitally controlled, so there's no issues leaving it on one volume. So if I play something, let's just go back to music again and play something at low volume, and we've got sound. And it's good sound as well. You can listen to it at volume levels of 1 or 2 or 3 in the middle of the night and not disturb anyone, but you'll still hear the sound. A lot of volume controllers, you don't have enough volume at low volume, so you have to not turn it up a bit before it actually kicks into life. But you get good sound dynamics output at low volume from the amp, and the speakers obviously play good low volume as well. So whether you're a low volume listener or a high volume listener, it doesn't really matter. But again, around about there, that's probably about 15%. It is excellent. It's like loud enough to shake the room, but typical listening is around about there. So maybe about 10%, between 5 and 10% is normal listening. Connection wise, I'm using USB-C. I have used optical as well, it works fine. When the amp loses power, if you power it off, it does remember the last input source, and it also remembers the input volume, which is quite cool. It's not something you see on a lot of amps. Topping seem to do that very well, so that's cool. And I believe FiO do the same as well. Yes, they do, because I've got it on the K11R2R there. The only downside is there's no headphones output, so you do need your own headphones out amp, hence why I'm using the R2R. And yeah, that's it really. It's not really much else to say. Amazing for stock op amps, and I can highly recommend the OPA627. Inexpensive, but gives you better dynamics than the stock op amps. But if you want to go the next level up, so if you want to dial it up to 11, for example, let's see, I'd say the stock op amps, the NE5532P, sit around about 7 or 8 out of 10 on the scale. The 627 sit 9 to 10 because it improves the sound to the next level, and the SS3602 take it up to 11, maybe a 12 beyond that. But that is at a cost, so you are paying £70 each for 2 op amps from Sparkos to get to that level. But then you increase your sound quality and in immersion with music or games or whatever considerably. So if you've got a good set of speakers, then I highly recommend changing the op amps at the minimum to the 627, because you will really enjoy compared to the stock ones. But if you want to go the full hog, go for the Sparkos. The chassis itself does get very hot. Right now it's been on for about 4 hours, and if I rest my finger on it and just leave it on it, it can get uncomfortable. I did measure it with a digital thermometer, and it was 49 degrees at that time, so that was after about 3 hours of use. When you open it up, you will notice that the PCB is contacting with this shell, so the entire housing, the entire shell is acting as a heatsink. You don't need the 48 volt 10 amp power supply with this. I am using the GAN 48 volt 5 amp one that you can opt when buying from the Aiyima store on AliExpress, but you don't need the 10 amp one. It gives you more power, yeah, but 100 watts per channel at 8 ohms is still a whole lot. You are going to be able to drive any speaker you throw out this with the stock power supply with the 5 amp one, so don't bother wasting money on the more expensive 10 amp one, which also has a fan inside, and it's also almost twice the size of the 5 amp one. So just stick to the stock power supply and you'll be more than happy. That's about it really.